Hello, I'm the pop culture guy, and happy holidays, everybody. It's today. I'm gonna essentially give myself a Christmas gift this year and not do anything really festive. And I'm gonna count down my top 13 favorite anime movies. Why 13? Because I always like to have a little something extra. So let's count down. So let's go to the east as we count down my top 13 favorite anime movies. Number 13 on my list is actually going to be something of a double feature. It's Perfect Blue and Millennium Actress, both of which are directed by the same guy, Satoshi Kon. And I place these two because not only are they made by the same guy, but they also kind of deal similarly, like a lot of his work, with the blurring between fantasy and reality. However, one of them is more darker than the other. Now, you're probably wondering, what are those two movies about? Well, here's a quick synopsis. Perfect Blue is about a young pop idol who decides to quit her group, Cham. Sounds kind of like Wham, doesn't it? And decides to essentially become an actress. So at first you'd think it'd be kind of boring, but there's actually a lot of interesting stuff there. For example, she's stalked by a stalker who's very crazy, and receives death threats. People around her start dying. It starts becoming really dark, and she herself starts to question her own sanity, whether or not she's, killing everybody. So basically, it's kind of like how it deals a lot with male gazing and like commentary on stuff on media being very sexualized with women. Now I'm not saying that it's that I'm not saying that sexualizing is exactly good, but I don't know. Sometimes you just need to sexualize. But anyway, that's a thing. So it's kind of an interest, and also it kind of inspired a lot of Darren Aronofsky, the same when he made his movie Black Swan and Requiem for a Dream, because in Requiem for a Dream there's a scene that mimics a famous scene in the movie, and with Black Swan there's a lot of scenes that parallel the style of Perfect Blue. But yeah, and Black Swan, and Perfect Blue and Black Swan, they're, like I said, and they're very similar with nearly identical plot similarities. But that's another story. Anyway, Millennium Actress, on the other hand, that's a little bit more lighter. And that's about a struggling actress about essentially an aging actress who is telling essentially her life story to this film crew, and how many of the movies she did, and it shows many of the movies she did in some ways parallel her real life. And you kind of get the impression that she's sort of mixing the movies with reality, like things don't really make and so it's a lot different than other life stories. But yeah, anyway, I think they're really good movies, and I think I think Perfect Blue and Millennium Actress are definitely ones I think everybody should check out, just to see what fantasy meets reality is kind of like, what fantasy being blurred with reality is kind of like. Number 12 on my list is a movie called The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. This is essentially a movie that's a little different. It's a time travel movie, but there's a lot of, but it has told with a really interesting character. Basically, it's about this girl who is this kind of tomboyish kind of girl. She plays baseball with the boys, and yeah, she has a girlfriend. She has kind of a girlfriend, but I mean, but she's for the most part, this girlfriend is very girly, but for the most part, she's a tomboy. Anyway, what happens is that at one point, she discovers this device that gives her the ability to go back in time, and at first she uses it for her own selfish benefits, but starts to realize that her actions have consequences, and decides to essentially redo a lot of her mistakes. Now this was the directorial debut of a man named Mamarou Oshii. Well, yes, I know he did Digimon, but I meant this was the first good movie in which he did. That was a directorial debut. And it's actually, I read this, it's kind of a loose sequel to a Japanese novel. In fact, one of the characters they actually mention it. In fact, one of the main characters from a book even appears in the movie, but that's another thing. But anyway, also they kind of establish that there's limits to how many times she can use things, and there's little moments that just kind of make me laugh, how she manages to relive there's a scene in the thing where when she discovers it, she uses it and alters, and we see a montage of her altering things. She starts to relive a single karaoke session for hours. And it's dang, Japanese love karaoke, don't they? So, and also the song she picks, Time Waits for No One, Not For You, Your Mother, or I don't know, something. It's really kind of fitting, especially since it echoes the arc words that are said throughout the whole movie. Time waits for no one. And, well, yeah, and also that's kind of ironic because she can essentially travel through time, so. And there's also kind of a twist, but I won't spoil what happens. But yeah, it's a really great movie. Definitely give it a watch. Number 11 on my list is Wolf Children, also directed by Mamarou Oshii. And this is a little different. It's essentially a love story about about this irregular girl who falls in love with this man who turns out to be a werewolf. You know, kind of like Twilight, only we give a crap. And basically what happens is that they fall in love and have these, two half-human, half-wolf children. And the father is killed in an accident, so they move to the countryside. And the rest of the movie is just her dealing with these, having to deal with these children who are very fantastical. And it shows kind of various progressions of life and stuff. And there's also various points where one of the children even has a bit of a change of character. And yeah, the whole movie is really fascinating because of what it's essentially shows what it's like to live with something fantastical. Dang it. So yeah, it's a really good movie to sort of check out if you're into stories about life and stuff. Number 10 on my list is this is my last movie I'm going to mention about Mr. Mamarou Oshii, Summer Wars. Now this is something I think you'll never believe when I say this. Basically, the story is it's about this regular student kid boy He's also a math genius. Basically, what happens is that he gets invited by this girl to like see her family, and her family is giant. I mean, there's enough family members that could fill the Grand Canyon, if believe it or not. But basically, this family is that the reason she's inviting him is because she wants to essentially pretend like they're engaged or something, and that he's, this smart person who's been abroad when really he's not very bright. Well, he is a math genius, but I meant he hasn't been a whole lot of places. So what happens is that one day he finds, while at the family house, he finds this math problem on his computer, and being so good with numbers, he decides to solve it. Little does he know that means that his internet account, part of this internet internet thing that has like everything on it, it's called Oz. Basically a computer virus essentially takes over his account, and then things start getting really hectic when all of a sudden and so like the family members try to help stop this virus with their avatars online, but then like this computer virus starts to like essentially have plans to destroy the world. So basically it's up to the entire family to stop this computer virus before it before it causes a major disaster. So yeah, what I just said may sound completely and utterly ridiculous, but it's actually kind of. But I like how well done it is. I like some of the characters, some of the family members, and there's actually a few times where they reference stuff that I didn't expect to be referenced. For example, the computer virus wants to essentially send down a satellite to this plan for destroying is to send a satellite to this nuclear facility. The idea of having something being sent down to crash into a nuclear facility, obviously that's very similar to war games. The name of the virus itself is called, believe it or not, Love Machine. Just like the song. And one of the characters even points that out, that isn't that the name of the song? And also one of the characters quotes Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. And that is just cool. But yeah, Summer Wars is a really, I think, intense sort of movie. It's got all the right, it's like, it has a lot of intense stuff in it, but has just the right amount of humanity in it, to make you sort of care. Also, there's a moment where one kid gets nude, and the main character, like, gets embarrassed seeing this girl that invited him naked in the tub, saying the tub is free, and all sorts. And it's just, you'll have to see the movie for yourself to even get that. But yeah, anyway, still check it out. Number 9 on my list is Akira. Now. And this is a movie that I think nearly everybody remembers. And also it had a little inspiration in mainstream Hollywood. So why isn't it higher on the list? Well, anyway, it's based on a manga, and the manga itself is the size of the Bible. I mean, like there's all sorts of stuff happening at once. But anyway, the movie and the manga are about this. It takes place in this dystopian future after after a thing that destroys the city happens, and a city is built in the place of Tokyo, which was destroyed by an explosion. An explosion? Let's find out. This explosion is caused by this explosion has caused this new Tokyo to appear, Neo Tokyo, which is a crime-ridden city filled with biker gangs and and revolutionaries. And it follows one of the bike gang members named Tetsuo, who gets some psychic powers after one encounter, and is captured by the government, and which, by the way, is holding the Olympics in 2019, which is funny because that's exactly because Tokyo's having the Olympics as well. And Tokyo in the anyway, what happens is that he escapes this facility, and eventually, over the course of the movie, starts to develop godlike powers, and starts to want to essentially cause destruction, and prove that he's a god and stuff. So, and it's up to his friends and the government to stop him. So, yeah, that's basically Akira, and how it was the movie that basically brought anime to the West, and by that I mean it caused the whole big explosion of fandom in anime in the US that we know now. And even though the movie cut a lot out from the manga that would have essentially had all the other stuff that you may question, like all of a sudden there's a coup and stuff, and a bunch of other or why is there a revolution in the first place, and all that's explained in the manga, but really this movie's kind of just like a preview to that. But what I think makes this movie good is that basically, if you were to say this, is that it's kind of like, in a weird way, sort of like 2001, in that there's a lot of stuff that you don't really understand, and that it has kind of a mind-bending sort of feel to it, and kind of almost warps your brain, essentially, because you really have to think with this movie. Otherwise you'll probably get lost, but yeah, in spite of that, I still really like this movie, and I definitely give it a high recommendation. And also, before I go on, it actually had a big influence in Western Hollywood. For example, Kanye West used examples in a music video. The song wasn't really that good, by the way. It also inspired The Matrix with some moments, and it even inspired the movie Chronicle, about a bunch of which was about a bunch of teenagers that get superpowers from this meteorite, and one of them goes crazy. So, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I definitely give it a recommendation. If you find it, check it out and see what you think. Number 8 on my list is Ghost in the Shell. The original, not the remake. But Ghost in the Shell, this is another movie that many people consider to be a classic, and essentially what it is, it's a movie that is about this robot. It's about this cyborg who has to locate this hacker that's been hacking into people's brains, and because in this future everything is all cybernetic. There's barely an organism on the planet, right? That there's barely an organism that isn't that doesn't have some sort of cybernetic thing in it, because it's practically robots have replaced humans in a way. Um, but anyway, so this movie's kind of great because it deals with a lot of philosophical issues, mostly concerning like what makes an organism an organism. Now, and I know that's what a lot of people say, but still, it's kind of true. And and yeah, there's also a lot of stuff that inspired The Matrix, basically, and it's inspired other sci-fi movies as well, but particularly The Matrix. And with The Matrix, they copied a lot of scenes. There's even a scene that's kind of a shot-for-shot remake of. You remember the market scene in The Matrix with where near the end of the movie where they're shooting at them, where the agents are shooting at Neo in the place. Well, here the same thing kind of happens. They even have the melons getting shot. There's even a moment where they're in the where they near the end. This is kind of now I won't give away like exactly what happens, but basically the Major is fighting this robot in this abandoned building, and the bullets are like whizzing through the water, and they're shooting at the pillars. Again, that sounds similar to like when they're assaulting in the Matrix, when they're having a shootout in the lobby, and with the bullets whizzing in the water when they're trying to save Morpheus. But anyway, so yeah, Ghost in the Shell, definitely check it out. I will warn you, however, there's a lot of sexual stuff in it, so if you can't handle that sort of thing, then don't watch it. But otherwise, feel free to. At number 7 on my list is another double feature, believe it or not, and it's Lupin III, The Castle of Cagliostro, and Cowboy Bebop the movie. Both of which were based on something. Hence why I put them here. And I put them here because not only are they both adaptations of something, but they both have some sort of, unique flair to them. Now Lupin III, The Castle of Cagliostro, is about this thief named Lupin III, or Wolf in the English version, who after robbing a casino, discovers that there's a counterfeit thing, and that it goes to this government, to this country, Cagliostro, and decides to infiltrate the castle to discover the counterfeiting ring. And Lupin III is probably, Castle of Cagliostro is best known for essentially basically being the directorial debut of the great Hayao Miyazaki. And also, it's it's essentially one of John Lasseter's favorite movies, so there you go. But Lupin III is interesting because it's based on a manga. The Lupin III Castle of Cagliostro is best known for also being essentially radically different from the manga, by a guy named Monkey Punch. Yeah, that's actually his name. I didn't make that up. And they're radically different. For example, Lupin, in the manga, he was more of an anti-hero, but here he's portrayed more as sort of more of a heroic sort of character. And granted, there are traits of his anti-hero persona, but other than that, nothing. Also, the characters of Jigen and Goemon are essentially more lighthearted sort of characters, whereas in the manga they're more kind of serious. Also, the character of Fujiko Mine is less sexualized in the movie than she is in the manga. Though that didn't stop Monkey Punch himself from actually liking it. Um, eh. Anyway, so, and now that brings it, and Cowboy Bebop the movie, on the other hand, is a little different. Based on the anime of the same name, it follows our four main characters: Spike Spiegel, Jet Black, Faye Valentine, and Ed Wong. Also, there's the Welsh corgi with human intelligence, Ein, who decide to go to this who decide to foil this plan for a huge bounty. But yeah, the movie is actually really different because many of the voice actors in the show actually reprise their roles to play the characters. So, like I said, many of the casts reprise their roles from the show in this movie, and they also capture a lot of their personalities from the show too. And so yeah, I say, like I say, give Cowboy Bebop and Castle Cagliostro a chance. I think you'll really like them. One bit of note though, you might want to see the show before you see Cowboy Bebop the movie. Just saying. Anyway, number 6 on my list is a movie called Is Your Name. Now, Your Name is this movie that is actually a really interesting story. It's a love story, but involves body switching. Basically, it's about this boy and this girl who live in two separate places in Japan. One lives in Tokyo, the other lives in the countryside. And basically what happens is that for whatever reason they start switching bodies, and they start leaving things with each other to help improve themselves. And but then they realize that they're essentially connected through time travel because they're stretched between a considerable amount of time, like 3 years, and because one of them decides to go back in time to help prevent something that will kill her, and so that they can be together one day. So yeah, that's the basic plot of Your Name, and I've never seen a love story told like this, told as a body switching movie. You know, because with body switching movies, you'd expect it mostly to be comedy, but here it's a love story, and that's where I think a lot of meat comes in. It's also fascinating to see their various lives, like when switched, when not switched, how they react, that kind of thing. So yeah, and so it's really, really fascinating stuff. Fascinating to see a love story told this way. So yeah, definitely give it a chance. Number 5 on my list is Whisper of the Heart. Now, Whisper of the Heart, for those of you who don't know, is actually a Studio Ghibli movie, but it's not directed by Isao Takahata or Hayao Miyazaki. Instead, it's directed by one guy who was going to replace them, but sadly he died right after the movie was finished, so this is his only work. Well, Whisper of the Heart is about this girl named Shizuku Tsukishima, who's a bookworm, let's be honest. And she finds out that a lot of the books that she's been checking out are also checked out by another person. And this person turns out to be a boy she can't stand. Seiji Amasawa. But over time, they start to realize that maybe they have more in common than they think. So they kind of start to fall in love. And that's not all. They also kind of have this thing where she goes into this antique shop and gets kind of inspired, particularly by a cat statue played by Carrie Elways. And yeah, and so she decides to become a full-time writer. How much to the dismay of her parents, and well, pretty much, the rest of the movie is kind of like essentially showing the difference between following your dreams and what you should probably do with your life. Kind of a, compromise kind of thing. And also the dubbing, I gotta say, like, they got some really talented people to do the dubbing. There's Ashley Tisdale, Brittany Snow, the Carrie Elways, like I mentioned. That there's just a lot of people talented. Also, fun fact. Also, the movie has constant use of the song "Country Roads Take Me Home," which I'm surprised is in this, and is played by and to where they even play the song in the opening credits all the way to the end credits, and both different versions, of course. And yeah, it's really kind of It's really fascinating to see, like, what someone should most likely do with their lives versus, say, following the dreams. Yeah. Number 4 on my list is Tales from Earthsea. Now, this is a movie that many people kind of that's kind of split with a lot of people. Some people like it, some people don't like it. Personally, I like it. I just think it's really good. It's based on a book series of the same name, and based on a book series, and is the directorial debut of Hayao Miyazaki's son, Goro. And, well, basically it follows this prince who, after stabbing his father with a sword, and also that there's news of, like, something bad will happen in this land, runs away and runs into a wizard. And this wizard, basically news of a wizard named, who's essentially evil and wants to use, like, magic for his own thing. And along the way, they meet a girl with a burned scar, a slimy bad guy, a woman who's kind of taking care of the girl with the burned scar, and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, this is kind of a movie that's not really, because I mean, when most people think fantasy or something, they usually think of, like, big battles and stuff. But many of the people often forget that fantasies aren't often. They don't always have to start off with big battles. They can mostly start, small. And in this case, it does really good because in how there's not a whole lot of battles, but many of the stuff they talk about is actually really fascinating, I think. And how the voice act, and how they got a lot of talented people to do the dubbing. They got Timothy Dalton. They got Willem Dafoe, Mariska Hargitay. They got Cheech Marin. I mean, there's, like, a really talented people working here, and especially, like, Timothy Olyphant is the good guy wizard, Sparrowhawk. His voice just sounds so epic. Like, I follow him anywhere. I mean, just. And also, Willem Dafoe does a really great job at at playing the villain because how he whispers all his lines, and he's so creepy and stuff. You know, he really gets under your skin. It's kind of So yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. And I do hope that eventually they kind of get a sequel to this movie. I just because it ends on kind of a cliffhanger, on sort of a lot of unanswered questions, but I think it's worth checking out, and I hope they make a sequel to it, and especially I hope Goro comes back to do this thing, to do it. So, number 3 on my list is Grave of the Fireflies. Now this movie is really different because basically it tells a true story. Well, it's based on a book that that's semi-autobiographical. The story is that there's this young boy and his little sister who are trying to survive the final days of World War II and are basically like orphaned and living on their own. And well, this isn't really a spoiler, but you're told in the beginning that they're gonna die, and the rest of the movie is showing like what led up to those events. And yeah, it's a really heartbreaking movie, and a lot of people say that this movie is kind of an anti-war movie, but there's also an equal amount of people, including the director of the movie himself, Asao Takahata, who actually say that it's not really an anti-war movie, but more like story of survival, because really this movie could take place in any kind of situation. It could be in another war, a natural disaster, like it could be anything. And the character and our main character is actually like there's a lot of scenes in this movie that I was like, he and his sister are essentially being mistreated. Like a lot of the people won't help them. Their adoptive aunt that they have to live with at first before moving, like they're just like all the people are so mistreating, and there's very few people that actually want to help them. I mean, it's a really sad movie. You'll definitely need your tissues for this one. It's just, but yeah, if you manage to get through it, I think you'll find it really enjoyable, and a really, really powerful story. Also, fun fact: this was actually shown at the same time as My Neighbor Totoro. No joke. And that's a movie that many people consider that's essentially a very happy sort of movie. Number 2 on my list is The Wind Rises. Now this is the movie that Hayao Miyazaki has said that he would never do again. That after this he'd never do again. And at first it seemed, and very much like his other claims, it seemed serious. But now he's making another movie, so let's see where this goes. But anyway, the movie basically tells the story of a man named Jiro Horikoshi, who is a real-life man who created the Japanese Zero, which was used during World War II. And the interesting thing is that not only is that it kind of combines elements from a true story and a fictional story, but also making it kind of romanticized, but also they don't really focus a whole lot on like the war part of it, but just showed that all Jiro wanted to do his whole life, all he wanted to do was create. You know, he didn't care about politics or anything like that. He just wanted to create airplanes, and stuff like that. And I think that's really something. That all he wanted to do was create, not destroying war. Though to be fair, it's not like they don't completely gloss over the whole what it led to, but it's but they also show that that's not important. That they show that his that he essentially was a great guy, just and didn't care about anything other than creating. And there's also some real. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. There's some really good dubbing here once again. You've got Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Emily Blunt, Stanley Tucci, William H. Macy, Martin Short, surprisingly enough, and probably the best performance of all, Werner Herzog. and he's really good at acting. And his voice in the movie almost reminded me of Christoph Waltz. I don't know why. Maybe it's how, because there's not a whole lot of German in his voice, like it's not very thick. But that's another. We're getting a little sidetracked. So yeah. Anyway, I like how they kind of tell a story that's both fictional and true at the same time. How it's fictionalized, but there's also some historical stuff in there as well. So I say, but yeah, definitely check it out. And number one on my top 13 favorite anime movies list is Princess Mononoke. Princess Mononoke is essentially my all-time favorite anime movie, and one of my all-time favorite movies. The story is about this prince named Ashitaka, who after getting cursed into his hand getting cursed, decides to essentially go on a journey, and discovers all sorts of things. A town run by this lady named Lady Iboshi, a bounty hunter basically, and the titular Princess Mononoke, who is raised by these wolf gods, and it finds himself in the middle of this war between Irontown and these spirit gods. Now this movie was essentially the first Ghibli movie I ever saw, and it was I was absolutely blown away when I first saw this movie. I thought it was just amazing. I thought the animation was beautiful, the writing, it was just amazing. Plus the talent. I know I've been saying this for a lot right now, but I just can't help it. The Ghibli dubs always have the best talent. There's Billy Crudup. There's Minnie Driver. There's Billy Bob Thornton. Gillian Anderson, Jada Pinkett Smith. I mean, there's just Keith David. I mean, I could go on and on. There's like all types of people in this, all types of talented people here. And I gotta say, the movie is just a work of art. What can I say? It's Princess Mononoke, I mean, I think everybody and their mother knows this movie. Well, if you're an anime fan, or a movie buff, just an anime fan. But basically, that this is a really movie that I think a big percentage of people know, and if you haven't seen it, what are you doing watching this video? Go see it. It's amazing. So yeah, this was my first list, top 13. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you like it enough to have me make more lists in the future. And anyway, have a happy holidays, everybody. I'm glad you enjoyed my little Christmas gift to myself. Anyway, I'm the Pop Culture Guy. See you later.